didn't run for something and have the people resoundingly say, no, we don't want you. We'd prefer someone else and not you. And so you will lose this race. But in this second term, they really are stuffing the whole administration with people who have not just once upon a time lost an election here or there. All politicians at some point usually lose something. No. This is like the last thing you did was lose a thing. They almost seem to be going out of their way to find people for whom the last thing they did in politics, the last thing they did in public life was ask the public to approve of them. And the public said, no, we do not want you.
There are two Seward that perfectly describe Donald Trump's campaign versus his presidency. And no, it's not that Seward, although there are some plenty of bad names I call him in my head. But the Donald Trump campaign was all about cost. He wanted to talk about the cost of groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of rent. Now, of course, he didn't care about bringing those costs down, but he certainly wanted to talk about them. The chord now for his presidency, culture, wars. Donald Trump is focused on the culture, wars, being transphobic, fear-mongering about the border, the Gulf of America, but one that's really stood out lately that for some reason he's still harping on is plastic straws. And this latest stunt from Donald Trump has really backfired, not just with Democrats calling out how ridiculous this attack is, but Republicans as well, and we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we get into how this post backfired from Donald Trump, this ridiculous stunt, I want to hear from Elizabeth Warren on the reason why voters, even MAGA voters, are quickly growing tired of Donald Trump stunts.
But just an announcement of a big tariff and no obvious, why are you doing this? What is the goal? Who are you trying to protect? What part of the American economy are you trying to help? And so far, there's just nothing from President Trump.
I think a lot of those questions can also be applied to the agency that you conceptualized, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the way that there are efforts now to shut it down. Can you talk about your reaction to that? But then also, I know you. Did you build in any fail-safes predicting that something like this could happen?
So let's start with where we are in this moment. Remember, Donald Trump ran for office saying he would lower prices for American consumers. He was going to cut costs. He said he would do it on day one. He said right after the election that he was elected on groceries, that he was going to bring down prices. Instead of doing that, he's turned around and he's actually cutting the parts of government that help bring down costs for American families. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is the perfect example. Remember, it was put in place right after the big financial crash because these giant banks had cheated people. So in the dozen years that the consumer agency has been there, it has forced those big financial institutions to return more than $21 billion that they had cheated American families out of, and to give that money back to those families. That's cutting costs for families. And right now, what Donald Trump has said is, just sideline all those cops. Let any giant bank that wants to cheat you on a credit card or a mortgage or a car loan just have open season on American consumers. That's not going to cut costs. That's going to raise costs for families.
You know, Senator Joe Scarborough here. So great to have you with us.
Good to be here. I
don't want to oversimplify the election results because you've been around long enough and I've been around long enough to know that a 1% or 1.5% swing would have changed things entirely. So I'm not going to be here to say, oh, Democrats have gotten everything wrong. and to that point, Kamala Harris may have lost the battleground states, but Tammy Baldwin, a lesbian legislator, won Wisconsin. And you had a woman winning Michigan. You had a progressive Hispanic winning Arizona. You had a female legislator winning Nevada. So it's not all black and white. I mean, Democrats did very well in other parts of swing states, too. That said, that's all a really big windup for this question. How in the world do billionaires gut agencies that are meant to protect working class Americans? How do billionaires raise tax cuts for billionaires and brag that they're raising tax cuts for billionaires and gut spending to protect working class Americans? And how do Democrats lose any elections among working class voters? Maybe you have an answer that the rest of us do not have, but does that not just seem crazy on the surface of it?
So let's take a look at Elon Musk. He spent $288 million to get Donald Trump elected. That's a lot of money and a lot of ads. And believe me, they didn't talk about in those ads raising taxes on billionaires. They talked about cutting costs for American families. So now Elon Musk has shown up and said he's ready to collect on his investment. Here's one way that he may be trying to collect on that investment. You know, X, formerly Twitter, lost money hand over fist. Elon Musk has a new plan, and that is X money. That is that he's going to be out there in everybody's financial life. He faces one problem, though, and that is the financial cop on the beat. The CFPB that stands behind him looks over his shoulder and says, you can't cheat people, you can't trick people, and you can't suck up their personal financial data or any personal data and use it just for yourself or sell it to anyone you want to. So what's Elon Musk doing? Well, just a little bit ahead of launching his product, he says, let's shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Let's take those financial cops off the beat. It is a little like a bank robber saying, I know what let's do. Let's fire the cops, turn off the alarms, just as the bank robber decides to stroll into the lobby of the bank. I think that people are beginning to tumble to what Elon Musk is up to. And I think this is going to be one of the places where the rubber's going to hit the road on whether or not Elon Musk runs this country or we're going to pull this back and have a democracy that actually works for the American people.
Like I said, he promised to bring down costs. He is doing anything but that. In fact, Donald Trump is doing the opposite. We are seeing costs skyrocket right now, not only because of a labor shortage due to Donald Trump's fear-mongering about immigration and those workers who were so important in so many different sectors, but Donald Trump's stupid trade war. The Wall Street Journal called it the dumbest trade war in history. We see the price of eggs soaring. We see groceries going up. The anticipation of corporations for Donald Trump's tariffs had costs going up even before he was inaugurated out of fear of what he would do. If that is the Trump presidency, it is higher cost for you as Elon steals your tax dollars to put them in his pocket. And what has Donald Trump focused on? Plastic straws. ESC signed an executive order saying we're getting rid of the paper straws, bringing back the plastic ones. And when he made a post about it on his presidential Instagram, the response conservatives was not happy. As you can see the post from Donald Trump on Instagram saying we're going back to plastic straws, and the response in the comments wasn't too happy. Someone wrote, as a conservative, I find this utterly dumb. Another comment saying what happened to lowering grocery prices immediately, with the final comment saying tiny bottle for tiny hands. Donald Trump's idea of promises, made promises kept, is keeping his promise to rename the Gulf of Mexico or signing some nonsensical executive order about plastic straws, which, by the way, you can still get and use if you want. I don't know why. This is how people are self-actualizing politically, is by saying, oh, we beat the libs because I'm going to have a plastic straw, which I could still get if I wanted to. It's just ridiculous. And people are becoming more and more fed up with it every single day. Getting more tired of the Trump administration, which is, as Rachel Maddow put it, in a segment we are about to check out, really just a band of losers. People who have already been rejected by voters for their failures. And Im Twao put that together so perfectly, talking about how unpopular this Trump administration is becoming really quickly, while Donald Trump still tries to hold on to this idea that he has some sort of mandate. It's untrue. Mattel was calling it out. Let's take a look.
Show you something here. See if you can spot the pattern here. A few days ago, Donald Trump appointed a new spokesperson for the Defense Department. His name is Sean Parnell. If that name sounds at all familiar, it's because the last thing he did in politics was fail in his effort to win a U.S. Senate seat from Pennsylvania. Mr. Parnell dropped out of the Republican primary after a judge took away custody of his children and ruled that Mr. Parnell had been violent and abusive toward the children and his wife. His wife had accused him, among other things, of throwing chairs at her, of dropping her off on an interstate on the side of the road when she was 6 months pregnant and telling her to get an abortion. She accused him of choking and strangling her. He denies the allegations, but that all came out during the campaign. And after the judge's ruling in that case, Mr. Parnell dropped out of the Republican primary, and he thus failed to win that U.S. Senate seat in Pennsylvania. That is the last thing that Sean Parnell did in public life. That's the last thing he did in politics. Now Donald Trump has named him spokesman for the Pentagon. Person who won that Republican primary for that Senate seat in Pennsylvania and then lost the Senate race in the general election, that was Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz. Trump has now named him to run Medicare and Medicaid. So that was the Pennsylvania Senate seat. In the Georgia Senate races, there were 4 different Republicans who lost while trying to get Senate seats from Georgia in 2020 and 2022, who have all now been named to things in the Trump administration. Kelly Loeffler lost a Georgia Senate race in 2020. Trump named her to head the Small Business Administration. David Perdue lost a Georgia Senate race in 2020. Trump named him to be ambassador to China. Doug Collins lost in the primary for Georgia Senate in 2020. Trump named him to run the VA. Herschel Walker lost a Georgia Senate race in 2022. Trump named him to be ambassador to the Bahamas. Carrie Lake lost her run for Arizona governor in 2022, and then she lost her run for Arizona senator in 2024. Trump just named her to run the Voice of America. Lori Chavez DeRemer lost her House seat in 2024 in Oregon. Trump named her to run the U.S. Labor Department. Brandon Williams lost his House seat in 2024 in New York. Trump named him to run the National Nuclear Security Administration. God help us all. Lee Zeldin lost his race for New York governor. Trump named him to run the EPA. Caroline Leavitt lost her campaign for a congressional seat in New Hampshire. Trump named her White House press secretary. The only thing wrestling executive Linda McMahon ever did in politics was lose 2 consecutive U.S. Senate races in Connecticut. Trump named her Secretary of Education. The last thing Tulsi Gabbard ever did in politics was disastrously lose a presidential run in 2020. Trump has named her Director of National Intelligence, which is like a horse walks into a bar joke without a horse or a bar. The only thing Robert F. Kennedy Jr. ever did in politics was run and then quit a presidential campaign this year. Now he's Trump's nominee to lead Health and Human Services. Who is Harmeet Dillon? Harmeet Dillon lost a race for Republican Party chair this year. Then Trump named her to lead the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Sam Brown lost a Nevada Senate race this year. Trump has put him at the VA. Dave Weldon lost a race for state legislator in Florida. Trump has now named him to lead the CDC. Dan Bishop lost the Attorney General's race in North Carolina this past year. Trump has made him the number 2 official at OMB. Bo Hines just lost a congressional race in North Carolina, so Trump put him on his new crypto board. Joe Kent has lost 2 consecutive races for Congress in Washington state. Trump just named him head of the National Counterterrorism Center. You noticing a theme here? I mean, I could go on, but are you noticing a theme? I mean, people keep saying no one elected Elon Musk, and that is definitely true. But, you know, at least in his case, he didn't try. He didn't run for something and have the people resoundingly say, no, we don't want you. We'd prefer someone else and not you. And so you will lose this race. But in this second term, they really are stuffing the whole administration with people who have not just once upon a time lost an election here or there. All politicians at some point usually lose something. No. This is like the last thing you did was lose a thing. They almost seem to be going out of their way to find people for whom the last thing they did in politics, the last thing they did in public life was ask the public to approve of them. And the public said, no, we do not want you.
You want to talk about people who aren't qualified? Just take a look at the Donald Trump administration, and you can start with Donald Trump himself, someone who should never have been anywhere near the White House. Not to mention 2 times, and now he has assembled the worst cast of characters and clowns in the history of organized government. It's embarrassing, and it's the reason people are quickly noticing that, yeah, those promises made, they're not promises kept. And that is what we have to continue to call out every single day on this show. Bring those newly disaffected Trump voters into our coalition. The midterms are 2 years away, but that is not that long. We have to work every single day to bring people in and call Donald Trump out. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.